How are we doing, guys? This is Mike Goes Outside coming at you with a two-part tutorial. Actually, my first video on the Mike Goes Outside channel as a creative type video here. And this is what I plan on for the future for this channel is, travel vlogs, editing tutorials, filmmaking, and stuff like that. So it's going to be a fun journey here. Anyway, without further ado, let's kind of jump into the edit. First part of this edit or video series is just my editing technique and my workflow. And the second part of the video, and it's actually going to be probably a separate video. The second part of the video is going to be preparing the image for lab printing. So I would say the second part of this video maybe won't appeal to many of you, which is why I'm kind of separating it into two different videos. The first video is just solely on, editing within Lightroom and what I use as a workflow or technique. With that being said, I do have different styles, but since I really want to make this into a print, I'm gonna try kind of a different style. I don't know what I'm saying right now. You guys are just gonna have to bear with me and just follow along here. But anyway, this image was actually shot at Rocky Mountain National Park. What's the lake called? I think it's not Emerald Lake. It's shoot, I forgot the lake name. Dream Lake? Is it Dream? I think it's Dream Lake. And as you can see, there's a subject wearing a red jacket. He's actually standing on the lake. The lake is frozen over with some snow on top. And as you can see, let me just zoom in quite a bit here. That's actually my buddy right there in the red. And sooner or later, we're going to Photoshop these people out right there. And also within Lightroom, and by the way, this is edited in Lightroom, so if you have another program, it might be difficult to follow along. If you're using another program, I don't even know why you're watching this. But anyway, if you could see that, guys, there's people in the woods. There's one guy right there. I don't know what he's doing, but then there's these two people right here, which looks like they're taking a piss or something. And when I originally edited this image and uploaded it to the internet, people were like, dude, there's like people pissing in the woods. And I'm just like, wait, what? And so I did actually go in and zoom, and yeah, there is people in the woods. And this kind of like freaked me out. I was kind of creeped out at first. But I thought that was pretty funny that someone caught that and told me. Anyway, this was shot with a Sony a7R Mark II with a Sony G Master 24 to 70mm lens. Everything that I shoot with, I'll include in the description below. That I'll put my gear list of stuff I use on the regular when I go out to shoot. Keep in mind, guys, down below are Amazon affiliated links, which kind of support the channel if you use those links to purchase whatever is listed down there. So yeah, I guess I should leave that disclaimer down, or I guess I should say that before I continue, I guess. One thing about me, guys, is I like to ramble a lot, so expect this video to be really long, but I'm hoping that it's also very informative for you guys, because I don't want to leave you guys just in the dust. So anyway, let's get to editing, shall we? First thing I like to do is change my background color to white within Lightroom. So we're gonna right click anywhere on the in the gray area and select white. My eyes. The real reason I do this is because most of my photos and perhaps most of your photos will be viewed on a white background. So this kind of simulates that. If you're posting on Instagram, Instagram obviously uses a white background. If you have a website, more likely than not, you're going to have a white background. It's generally, photos are generally put against a white background, whether that be online, on the wall, on a frame with a white mat board kind of thing. So that's why I edit using a white background. I hate editing with a white background just because it's so bright, but the reality is you want to kind of simulate the real thing, which is why I edit with a white background, if you're wondering. Anyway, let's actually go down to, and let me get rid of this here. Let's go down to the right hand side, and guys, make sure that you're in the develop module right there at the top right. You might be looking at something like this. Make sure that you are in the develop tab. That's where all this editing stuffs is going to be located. We're going to go down to lens corrections right there, and we're going to remove chromatic aberration. Now, depending on what kind of lens you're using and what focal length you're shooting at, you might not even have chromatic aberration. So for instance, if you're using a kit lens, you might notice this purple fringing on, edges of stuff. Like for example, right here, you might notice some purple fringing. It's not, I don't have any because my lens is kind of so sharp and it's a quality lens. But if you're shooting with like a Canon kit lens, then you might see that purple fringing. And let me just show you guys an example of what purple fringing looks like within the browser here. As you can see on the top of this hill, there is this little purple layer or purple outline. And this usually happens on where you have big contrast differences, I guess you could say. So by clicking on remove chromatic aberration, it'll actually get rid of that pretty well. Lightroom does an amazing job of getting rid of chromatic aberration. So anyway, let's go back to Lightroom here. And another thing that I do in the lens correction area is I make sure that enable profile corrections is checked. And what that does is it removes any potential distortion that your lens creates. What it does is it kind of makes things look bubbly if you don't uncheck it. In this case, I don't have much distortion, but I'm going to check it anyway. What I noticed to it, it also gets rid of like some minor vignetting on the top and bottom there. I'm not sure if you can notice it. And it kind of exposes the image up, it makes it a little brighter. So another thing you want to make sure that you select is the make of your lens, the model of your lens, and the profile of your lens. I think the profile will be automatic though once you select the model and the make. So those are the first two things I do on any picture. So let's actually get to the fun part, actually editing the photo, getting hands-on here. Okay, so the first thing I do in terms of actually editing is I come to the temperature tab and I kind of I'll leave it at as shot. I'll mess with the temperature. Right now it's a little too cool for me, which means it's a little too blue. I kind of want the snow to be a wider shade, or more of a warmer color. Basically what I'm trying to say is that the snow is too blue and I want it to make it white. So we're going to go ahead and up the temperature to, in this case, maybe 5400. It's going to be different for you, so don't copy these exactly. You're going to have to play with the slider left and right, until you get to that sweet spot. But I think I might go 5450 here. Maybe 5425. That looks okay. Tint, I honestly do not mess with tint, and if I ever do mess with tint, it's like very minuscule. It's like by the single digit numbers. I'm gonna drop that down to 4. Right now by default it's 6. You know what, I'm gonna make that 5. Okay, I like that. Okay, so here's where you kind of have to trust my process, and this editing technique kind of varies from person to person, and also varies from image to image. Now in this particular image, and you may have seen other people do this, but what I'm going to do here is I'm going to take my highlights and I'm going to drag it all the way to the left, and what that does is it gives me more details in the shadows. See that? Gives me more details in the shadows. I'm also going to do the same thing with the shadows level slider and move it all the way to the right. And what that does is it gives me more details in, I'm sorry, I had that flipped. Going left gives me more details in the highlights. Going right gives me more details in the shadows. And see how when I move the shadows, it makes everything more vibrant, which I don't particularly like, but we could fix that up pretty soon here. And you notice that the red just starts to pop way too much, and that's something that I do not like right there. So we're gonna zoom back out there. So now what we want to do is we want to find what's called the white point and the black point. And the way to do that is there's a little shortcut you could use, and that's by pressing shift, and while you're hovered over the word that says whites, if you hit shift and double click there, it'll automatically set the white point for you. Another way to do this kind of manually is on the keyboard while holding the Alt key or Command on a Mac. What you're going to want to do is move your slider to the right until you see that clipping. And by clipping I mean, you see that blue that appears? That means you're clipping your whites. So I'm just going to shift double click. And it gives me the white point of 70. I'm going to bring that down just a bit, maybe to 50. And we're actually going to do the same thing with blacks. We're going to shift double click, and it gives me a white point of -52. Generally speaking, it's not necessarily a bad thing to clip the blacks. I usually clip them somewhat because, to be honest, losing details in the blacks isn't a huge deal, but losing detail in the whites just makes everything look like shit. Like, for instance, if I bump this up to 100, look how bad that looks, you know? If I take down the blacks, though, it doesn't look too bad, right? Okay, but we're gonna go back to maybe -70 right there. Okay, so that's that. Now we'll come to clarity. Clarity, what it does is it kind of ups the contrast using some different algorithm, I guess. I don't mess with this too much. I think I'll do maybe +10 here. Vibrance, I'm not going to mess with, because when I up the vibrance, it makes the image cool again. And I kind of like where the temperature is at right now, so I'm just going to keep that at 0. Saturation, same thing. Keep that at 0. Tone curve. Now here is where things will get ugly, and this will actually take a lot of trial and error and messing around with to get something that you like. But you might be seeing something like this. That's the default setting for Lightroom is. But if you come here to this little square box, you're going to want to click that and make sure that you're on the RGB channel. Now I'm going to mess around for quite a while, and I might actually fast forward these next like several minutes, because it's gonna, I don't want to do this while talking to you guys, because it's probably gonna take a long time. So I'm just gonna sit here and edit and see what I can come up with, and I'll kind of explain it later. Okay, we're back, and basically, guys, what the tone curve is it gives you more control over the contrast. So I just basically put points on the graph randomly, and all I'm gonna say is the left hand side of the graph controls your shadows, and the right hand side of the graph controls your highlights. And you move the points up and down if you want to, you know, for instance, brighten the highlights, or take the highlights down, or brighten the shadows, or bring the shadows down. And this is what I came up with. It's going to be very, very different for each image, so don't sit there and try to copy what I have there. Another thing that's cool with this part is you could literally press this little button. It kind of looks like I guess there's no way of explaining it besides there's a circle and then two triangles on the top and the bottom. What you could do here is if you click that and then you go to somewhere on your image, you can click and drag up or down. And I'm giving you guys like drastic examples here just to kind of show you. You could mess with the curve like that as well. And I might actually kind of mess with it here just a bit. Okay, I noticed that when I did kind of finish editing that, it changed the temperature a little too cold again. So let me see if I could rebalance that. I'm gonna change, let's do 5500, 5550, 5550. So that's one thing. Okay, that looks better to me at least. Okay. Now what we'll do is, earlier I mentioned that the red was just way too saturated. Did I mention that earlier? I don't know. But anyway, the red to me, guys, is a little too saturated for my likings. So what I'm gonna do here is I'm gonna scroll down here to the crap. I'm gonna go down to the HSL and the color section here. I'm gonna press on color, and I'm gonna make sure that all is highlighted there. That way we could get all the colors here. That's the kind of the layout that I like. But if you like it like individually, you could, you know, to each his own, I guess. So we're gonna come to red, and we're gonna change the hue just a little bit to, let's see, you know what, let's mess with the saturation first. We're gonna bring that down to maybe negative 30, negative 31. And the luminance, we're also going to drag down maybe to negative 10, negative 9. And then here's where I'll mess with the hue. -4. Let's see. Let's zoom out and see what that looks like. Okay, so that looks better. So here's a before and here's an after. Let me just zoom in to show you guys the details there. Before and after. I just don't like very vibrant colors. I mean, they're good, but when you have it against the white, it just looks like it pops way too much, which is something that I kind of want to eliminate. Not completely, but, you know, just a little bit. And speaking of eliminating stuff, let me actually get rid of these people in the woods that I mentioned earlier. So we're going to press Q, and that will bring up the spot removal tool. We're just going to get rid of this guy here. So what I'm going to do here is I'm going to click and then just drag down, and oh my gosh, that gives me like the worst guess ever. Man, these guesses have been complete garbage for me on this image. Let me move that somewhere else that's not like, that just doesn't look like garbage. Now the good thing here is that this image is so large. It's actually 5300 by almost 8000 pixels. So when we zoom out, you're not going to notice much of this spot removal anyway. So we don't have to get too precise with it, which is really nice. But that's not to say that you could just get away with making it look like complete garbage. So definitely put an effort here. Okay, I'm gonna go up to the top right and change the feather to something really high. 72, and then we're just gonna press enter. Okay, so that looks pretty good, and from really far away, no one's gonna call you out on anything because you literally can't even tell. You know, I'm zoomed out right now, and if you're gonna post this on Instagram, no one's there's no way someone's gonna be like, oh my gosh, look at that obvious cloning right there. That spot removal is so obvious. No one's gonna no one's gonna give you shit for that. So we'll come back. We'll go to these other people. So far looking pretty good. Before the tone curve, after the tone curve, just adding a little more contrast there. Yep. Another thing that I'm going to do is I'm going to come back to the color section, and then what I'd like to do, for some reason, this is kind of a thing that's really unnecessary, but I'm going to take out the purples and the magenta because there's literally like none of that anyway. And I guess less is more. Let me see. Let me mess with the blues too. This will make the photo a little warmer. I'm going to bring down the saturation of the blue to about -20, I think. So my sweet spot. -20. Okay. Aqua, same thing. There's really no aqua here. So I'm actually just going to bring that down to -100. Green, there is green in the trees, but it's more so kind of like a darker tone of green. So I think what I'll do is I'll bring up the hue to maybe like 25 to 30-ish and kind of mess with the saturation here, see what I want. I don't know about the green pop here. I'll just leave it at 0. I do like the hue change though. Yeah, we'll just put the hue to 27 right there. Okay, we won't mess with the yellows. Won't mess with the orange. And that's about it for the color tab. You see, so here's before we mess with the colors, and actually here's after. So subtle change, but it makes a big impression on the photo. You know, I might actually come to the blues here actually and maybe make that -15 instead of -20 there. So there's going to be a lot of, you know, going back to different sliders and adjusting things, and it's something that you'll never ever be satisfied with. You know, you're always changing things, and I don't necessarily think that's a bad thing, but it kind of can make the editing process a really long time. All right, what do I want to do now? We're going to go actually into split toning. in the split toning section, and we're going to click on the highlights right there, that little box, and we're going to mess with these little buttons right there. And what that'll do is, I actually don't even like any of these. It'll change the kind of the tones in your highlights. Yeah, I'm gonna leave that at 0, and let's try the shadows maybe. I kind of like that, but it makes it a little, I guess, colder, but that kind of looks cool. I don't know. See, here's the thing too, like, it's really hard to determine what looks best, and it's kind of up to personal preference. But yeah, we're gonna stick with that right there, using that preset, and then we're gonna make it 12%, and then I'm gonna change the balance to +31 right there. See, the more left you go, the more colder it's gonna get. The more right, a little warmer it's gonna get. So I'm just gonna go back to what I was. Kind of like that. So before and after. Before and after. Again, very subtle, but definitely leaves an impression on the photo itself. Okay. Now, sharpening, for some reason, you know what? We actually might do the sharpening in Photoshop later. So we're just going to turn that off and actually just mess with sharpening in Photoshop later. So this is going to be a Lightroom and Photoshop kind of combined to make the final digital image. And then we'll talk about printing in another video using the same image. So as soon as I turned off the detail, everything started just to kind of look less sharp, obviously. So I'll keep it on for now just so I could work with it, and then I'll turn it off later. Okay, so now what I want to do, guys, is I want to kind of make this look a little more dramatic, if you will. And the way I'm going to do that is I'm going to select my grad tool, and I'm going to you're going to want to do that by pressing the M key, and see that graduated filter tool. That will bring that up. And what we're going to do is we're going to click and drag towards the top and go from top to bottom there. And I'm going to turn down the exposure. I want this to kind of look stormy and dramatic. We might even bring this down to right about there. But yeah, I want it to look kind of very dramatic. That might be a little too dramatic. So I'm going to set the exposure to maybe 0.75 there. That looks a lot better for my likings. And we're going to do the same thing on the bottom. So we're going to press M again. And then instead of going top to bottom, we're going to go bottom to top right there. And we're going to change the exposure right there. -7.6. I think that's kind of too dark for the bottom, so we're going to change it to -0.5. See how that looks. Okay, so that looks pretty good. Let me do a quick before and after here. So here's a before. Whoops, here's a is that okay, this is the before, and here's the after. So before, after. And as you can tell, like, the top looks pretty dramatic, huh? Pretty dramatic there. Another way to do the before and after is pressing Y, and that gives you like a side-by-side view. So we're going to hit Y again. And the other way is hitting the backslash button on your keyboard. That will do like the instantaneous kind of view. Just tap it. Okay, so there's a lot more that I kind of want to do with this image, and I'll tell you what that is. I kind of want to separate the blacks from the whites a little more here on the mountain side. So what we're going to do here is we're going to select the brush tool, and that's the K key on your keyboard. And we're going to change the exposure to maybe, this is going to be very, very subtle. So we're going to probably do negative 0.15. And we're going to up the brush size here by using the scroll wheel. And I'm just going to brush over the black. And although the exposure change was not that big, you could see that it's making a huge impact on the blacks there. I'm going to do the same thing over here. I'm just going to, while I'm doing this, I'm adjusting the brush size as well. And if you hit the O key, this will give you a good indicator of what it's actually affecting. So I see that it's kind of leaking out into the background or the sky. So what we could do here is go to erase right there on the right hand side. And we're just actually going to erase what it affected in the sky. And again, that's the O key to see what it's actually affecting. Okay, cool. This is like spot adjustment contrast. And it's something that it's a technique that I use to target specific things. Okay, so that's good. And then I want to come down to the blacks over here. You could faintly see them. And we're just going to kind of brush there. Let me see here. See, now that kind of looks unnatural. So what we'll do is we'll mess with the flow here. We're going to take the flow to maybe 50, and that kind of decreases the strength of the brush. And that's a lot better. It's a lot more subtle. But it's good. It makes it pop, you know. Bam. Makes it pop, you know. And you could tell, guys, you could actually tell that it's starting to pop the blacks there on the white. See where it's affecting right there. Sweet. Bam. And this is just things I do to just get the photo to become really dramatic. And we might erase some stuff here. We're going to change the flow on the eraser to about 40 there. And just kind of get it to look really natural. Okay. So I like that. I like that. We're going to go back into the brush. We're going to change the flow here on this left-hand side to, let's see. Well, I don't even know if I could adjust the flow. So what I'll do is I'll adjust the exposure. I'll make it -1. Okay. Let me see. Okay, so before and after. Okay, so I see some like, kind of does look a little unnatural over here. So I'll erase some of this here. Right there. Press the O key. And we'll erase some of that right there. Bam, just like that. Okay. Looks better. Like that. Yeah, what a journey this is, guys. It's 38 minutes into the video already. Wow. Okay, going back to the brush tool, and we're gonna come to this other mountain right here. This I'm gonna make -0.1 on the exposure. Subtle changes, very subtle changes, guys. And we're gonna go ahead and fill that in right there. Perfect. Just like a coloring book. Honestly. There we go. Bear with me here, guys. Wonderful. And these subtle differences make your photo just look so much better. Do some of that right there. Do some right there. Bam. Some right there, maybe. Okay. Maybe just a bit right there. Okay. And then we're going to hit new there, and then we're going to target this on the very right hand side. Bam, just like that. Just like a coloring book, guys. There we go. We're going to hit O to kind of get rid of that mask. Okay. Okay, so before and after of the kind of brush adjustments there, gives it a more dramatic look, guys. That's what I like. And you could do the same thing for the whites too. So you could make a new brush, and then we'll change the exposure to maybe plus 15, so plus 0.15, and you could go over the whites. I think the whites look pretty good though, so I'm not gonna, you know, I'm not gonna make a huge deal over it here. But yeah, you could definitely do it with the whites too. So I think that looks pretty good. Let me just see if I could. Kind of looks too cold up there, too blue. So I'm gonna probably up the temperature, maybe 3. I think 3 looks good right there. Let me see. Let me mess with the exposure once more. Yeah, let me see here. Point negative. Okay. Yeah, I think what I'll do here is I'll bring the highlights to negative 100 and then up the temperature to 7. Maybe bump up the highlights. Okay. That looks nice. Let's come back. I think I want to go to maybe 5, 3. Kind of torn. Okay, we'll leave the temperature maybe at 2. All these random numbers, like, what the hell's this guy doing? Okay, so I think at this point we could probably port this over to Photoshop. So let me give you the before and after. Before, you know, not really dramatic at all, kind of flat, and after, bam! Wow, such a difference, right? All 42 minutes of that, you know, oh shit, what just happened? Let's go back to the image. Okay. Let me actually look what vignetting looks like here. So we're gonna go all the way down into the effects, and we're gonna change vignetting, the amount to, let's try -10. Makes it a little more dramatic, and we're gonna mess with the midpoint here. I'm sorry, not the midpoint. We're gonna bump the feather up all the way to 100. And let's see here. So before the vignette, after the vignette, before the vignette, after the vignette. I kind of like the vignette, but it's too much at this point. I think I'm going to drop it down to -3. Let's see how -3 looks. Okay, -5. How does that look? -5. Okay, we'll do -3. I like -3 better. Okay, so now we're gonna port this over to Photoshop to sharpen it. And keep in mind, guys, we're still in part 1. Part 2 is gonna be how to prepare it for lab printing. So we're still on part 1. Part 2 is going to be actually a separate video. So before porting this into Photoshop, I'm going to actually change the detail. I'm going to turn off the details tab by clicking that little on switch. And as you can see, or maybe you can't even see it, but it changes everything so that it looks less sharp. Whoops, wrong one. Barely noticeable probably on your screen, but on my screen it's definitely a big difference. Okay, what we're going to do here is we're going to go to photo up at the top, and hopefully you guys have Photoshop for this. We're going to go to photo, and then we're going to click on edit in Photoshop CC 2017, or you might have some different version, but it's all the same. Okay. I wonder if I could make a white background in Photoshop too. I'm pretty sure there's a way. Yeah, we can. Light gray custom. Okay, we're gonna do white. Okay, perfect. Okay, so I don't want this window in my way. Okay, so right now you should see the background layer. Let's actually Photoshop out these people real quick. So I'm gonna hit Control J, duplicate the layer, and I'm actually gonna zoom in super mega here. And we're gonna come, we're gonna come to, on the left hand side, we're gonna go to, what am I looking for here? We're looking for the, let's try the content aware tool here. So if you press J, you know, that'll take you there, but you're gonna have to right click, or let me see. You're gonna have to right click on that and then go to content aware. Okay, this is gonna be a trial and error. Let's see. I don't think this is gonna work. What the f? Okay, okay. Forget the content aware. We're gonna do the spot healing. That's much better. Okay, so, bam! Oh my God, that works way better than Lightroom does. So, we're just gonna like. It's just like using the eraser, you know. This is pretty good. We're gonna do it pretty slowly here. Okay, let me see. Healing brush tool. Okay, now we're going to go to the healing brush tool. It's going to get a little more difficult around here. We're going to hit Alt to select a source. Click there and do that. Click, okay. Maybe back to the spot healing. I'm going to fast forward this section here, so bear with me. Okay, so that took a lot longer than I was expecting, but I got the job done. I had to use a lot of, let's see, I had to use a lot of spot healing brush tool. I had to use a lot of patch tool. I even had to get down and dirty with the brush tool and use a similar color to the snow right around his left arm. And here, I'll show you why. So here's a before with a couple in there in the image, and here's an after. So not bad, right? It looks like they weren't even in the picture to begin with, I would say. And we're zoomed in pretty good here. We're at 200%. You know, at 200% you might notice it, but at 100%, not too bad, you know. So before and after, I really had to use the brush tool on the right, or his left arm. So that was a little difficult, but honestly, guys, that might be actually really avoidable. It's kind of a communication thing with your subject. Basically, I just told my friend to, hey, go walk out towards the mountains, and I didn't even tell him to stop and look to the left. That's something he did on his own, and that made the picture so much better, because if it just looked like he was walking, it would have kind of made it boring. But what he's doing right now is he's kind of like looking to the left and kind of observing the scenery around him, and that makes the picture that much better, because it puts him into perspective with the mountains. Like, it's just such a breathtaking kind of image, I would say. But yeah, I think I want to say that's it. Like, communicate with your subject, tell them to just wait until there's no one in sight, kind of thing, and then that's when you'd want to take the picture, and kind of tell them to pose. That was totally avoidable on my end. Um, so little tips like that can go a long way. But anyway, I think that sums up part one. What I would suggest doing from here is, if you want to release this to Instagram or whatever, or on social media, you could go to File, Export, Export As, and I typically export them as JPEG at the best possible quality, 100%. And oh my, that's a big file, 30 megs. And let's see, anything else I want to say about that? That's pretty much it for this part. The next part you might as well watch too, because I explained sharpening, and I should have probably explained it in this video too, because you probably do want to sharpen, although you're not printing. Sharpening is really good no matter what, but stick around for part two. Actually, you might have to click on some link that I put on the video, or on the side you'll see like part two. Part two is where I will explain sharpening and how to get your image ready for printing. So I'll see you guys in part two.